It's the Matt Murphy Radio Show, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Open phone lines in the final hour, 615-737-9986. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you're certainly invited. We'd love to hear from you. That's 615-737-9986. Lots to get into this final hour, not the least of which, obviously, 14 injured children. 2 children have perished at the hands of an obviously deranged individual. We're learning more about the assailant. I hesitate to use the names. I don't like doing that because I don't like to aggrandize these individuals. But I think we in Nashville, Tennessee, can probably identify. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to understand. It's hard to identify with any of this, but we can understand the pain that the community of Minneapolis, Minnesota is going through, considering that we went through a similar experience several years ago with the Covenant School shooting. And frankly, there's some similarities to the circumstances involved in the Covenant School shooting and the shooting at the Catholic school in Minneapolis. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, were killed. The individual responsible is a 22-year-old biological male who reportedly identified as a transgender female prior to killing 2 at the Annunciation. Am I saying that right? Annunciation?
Yeah, that's it.
Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Reportedly uploaded a video. I've seen the video on social media showing weapons and equipment. That video has now been deleted on YouTube, but it's been reposted to a variety of social media platforms. I reposted it. It's not for the faint of heart. It is graphic in the sense that you're listening to a person talk about killing human beings joyfully. It's very odd. Obviously, mental connections are not being made with regard to his ability to value human life, the ability to recognize the value of human life. This person said that they had suicidal tendency and they wanted to do something like this for a long time, and he committed that heinous and violent act this morning. We thank God. We pray, and just shake your head and pray and offer whatever comfort or support you can to the families that lost loved ones. And in some way, you have to thank God that it wasn't worse. You just have to. You just have to lean on your faith. And thank God that it wasn't worse, because it could have been. No explainable reason why the assailant did not enter the sanctuary while Mass was going on, except that he didn't. I imagine that maybe we'll learn more about the plans as hours become days and days become weeks. We do know this, that there was a lot of hatred in this person's heart. Robin Westman was his name. He was born Robert and apparently changed it to Robin as he was, quote unquote, transitioning. Showed off his various magazines for his rifle, couple of magazines for his pistol. Written on those magazines, a lot of different messaging, anti-Semitic messages, things like kill Donald Trump, kill Trump now. Obviously was not a fan of the President of the United States, not a fan of various companies. It's just another weapon included the phrase remove kebab, which is apparently a reference to an internet meme celebrating the Serbian military leader in the nation's 1990s conflict with the Bosnian Muslims. I don't, the meme was later co-opted by those celebrating violence against Muslims. So this person had a lot of hatred, and he took it out on innocence. It's odd that he seemed to care so much about his family. And maybe this was just Bravo Sierra in his writings. But in those writings, he seemed to be very concerned about and sad about the suffering he was going to put his family through. All that to say, we're still digesting what went on. The shooter fired at praying children through church windows And I've seen conflicting reports. In one report, I see that he killed himself at the back of the church. Well, I've seen that. I see the back of the church. I'm assuming that the back of the church means the exterior of the church, but I don't know. It could very well mean the interior. As we spoke to Brink Fiddler earlier about this of Defense Systems, he made a comment, and a couple of you questioned this comment. It is normal human nature that if someone is firing at you and you're in a room and they are exterior to that room, it is normal that you would want to get as far away from the gunfire as possible. But unless you can safely remove yourself from that room through a doorway or a passageway and do so in a way that you're not going to get shot in the process, counter to what your human intuition tells you to do, what you should do is move to the wall closest to where the shooting is coming from. And then move away from any windows or any opportunity that the shooter has to view inside of the room that you're in. You go to the hot wall and into the corner of the hot wall because the shooter has the least line of sight against you, and you are least likely to be discovered if a person is looking through the doorway or the passageway, and they will not see you until the last possible minute, and they have to completely enter the room. And obviously, this is a worst-case scenario, but I just mentioned this because this is the type of training that you get from Brink Fiddler and Defense Systems, and they're very good at what they do. So a lot of people commenting on what went down earlier today out of Minneapolis, and we'll continue to update you. The FBI is obviously on top of this situation as well. The individual left a suicide note, claimed to be dying of lung cancer, although we don't really see any indication that that's true. And for someone who's a psychopath along these lines, you never know what's true and what's not. 1733 writes in and says, I have a sincere and honest question. Guns have been around for at least a couple of 100 years, and we haven't had mass shootings until recently. We also used to have psychiatric hospitals that have been closed down over the years, and now there are pretty much none. Is there any correlation of when the psychiatric hospitals closed and we saw the beginning of mass shootings or an increase in them? Yeah, I wouldn't say it was the beginning of mass shootings, but certainly mass shootings seem to have increased over the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. I do think that there's correlation there. I do believe that when, as I said at the beginning of the show, we hear about this, the political left immediately rushes to gun control. What does that mean? What does that mean? What do they want? What? Tell me what gun control law needed to be passed to prevent this happening today. I'm listening. I mean, sincerely, I'm listening. Tell me. Tell me what law you wanted on the books that would have prevented today's tragedy. Now, we are told the individual in question had 3 guns on him. A rifle, semi-automatic rifle, shotgun, and a pistol. So let's say the law that you want passed is you want to ban all assault rifles, whatever that means. That's a term that doesn't mean anything, but let's pretend it does for a minute. Well, he still had a handgun, and he still had a shotgun, and he still had an incredible amount of magazines and ammunition for both. Or magazine for the handgun, obviously, no magazine needed for the shotgun. Let me tell you, we are overdrugging our children. We have allowed the pharmaceutical industry to infiltrate our children in such a way that I believe this is a major contributing factor to what's going on. Secondarily, I believe that, and this is Matt Murphy talking, I don't have a medical degree. I don't pretend to. But in the interest of discussion, I would suggest to you that our children, it seems to me, think that they deserve or they are owed a life that is a worry or pain-free. And I think this has been drilled into them that if they're going through something wrong, that there is something that they can do to change it. I think a lot of what happens with so many kids these days claiming to be, quote unquote, transgender or gender neutral or gender fluid or all of these types of things. These are kids that are going through hormonal changes. These are young people that are going through life changes. They're suffering, as most of us did during those formative years, and they're being convinced, sadly, that there are fix-all things in their life that if you admit to this or if you agree to this or if you accept that or if you take this pill, that is a fix. And then there is the legitimate mental illness that we see in our country. Folks, life is, y'all know this, I don't have to tell you, life is hard. For the light to be so bright, there is darkness indeed. And I'm getting up there in years. I'd like to believe I'm halfway done. I'm more than halfway done now, but I remember, everything at 15 and 16 years of age seems to be, just earth-shattering and the end of it all. And, everything is so damn emotional. Almost every single person listening to me, if you think back on it, there was a moment in your lives where somebody in your circle or someone in your life in high school, you were worried because they were threatening they were going to do something to themselves. You know what I mean? Everybody. We all had it. I could name you the names. You go to a party and, there's drama and, Cindy Lou said she's going to kill herself. And back then it seemed to be, for the most part, just talk. And I understand that sometimes tragically it happened, but for the most part, it was just emotional talk. It feels as if a lot of that has been escalated and amplified. And I think social media has a lot to do with it. I think psychotropic drugs have a lot to do with it. I think tendency to attempt to convince kids that any amount of frustration, any amount of mild depression, any amount of the blues is unacceptable and means that there's something wrong with them. I think all of that contributes to what we see going on. And none of it has to do with a gun. None of it. None of it. I wish that our liberal friends, quote unquote, would just come at this a little more honestly. Because when they begin talking about gun control and assault weapons, they're really talking about all guns. They're talking about all guns. It's the only thing that makes logical sense. Because if we took away the assault weapons and that's where they'll start, then what comes next? What about the tens of thousands of murders that occur annually with handguns? Well, the left won't admit it, but they want those too. And I do not believe that that is acceptable to the American people. But what happened today should not be acceptable to the American people either. As I said earlier, and I'm not trying to repeat myself here, but get into the mentality that you are the first responder, that you have the responsibility to act, that you have a responsibility to protect yourself and others around you. There's no savior coming for you. There is no magic person hiding around the corner that's going to protect you. Our first responders are wonderful people, by and large. They are there for you almost instantaneously, and the key to that sentence is almost. They cannot be everywhere at once. We have to protect ourselves. We have to take charge of that responsibility. We have to fortify ourselves. And we must insist that we eliminate this nonsense known as gun-free zones. Nonsense. Criminals do not abide by these rules. They consider gun-free zones to be target-rich environments. Why do you think this cowardly, evil, targeted a child's church service? Because they knew that there would be no shooting back. We'll get to Jeff and your calls coming up in just a moment. A very complex issue, but one that merits discussion. We will also put a capper on the Cracker Barrel story for what it's worth. And, of course, your telephone calls and your comments. 23 after the hour on Super Talk. Thank you, Ken. 28 after. Calls and super text on the way. 8781 writes in and says, what is an assault weapon? Please explain. Well, I said this, and maybe I did not say it emphatically enough. The term does not mean anything. I was intentionally using the language of the left. This is the terminology that they use, which is why I say if I could magically, whatever they mean by assault rifle or assault weapon, if I could magically just make all of those things disappear, they would still come after your handguns. They would come after your shotguns. They would come after, they want it all. I mean, that is the natural conclusion to their argument. If their argument is it's all about the guns and not the people, then naturally they will go after the next thing. To the point that, are you going to be allowed to have knives in your daily life? Probably not. Jeff is in Indiana with a thought on all of this. Hey, Jeff, I'm glad you called. How are you?
Hey, Matt, doing good. But you kind of stole my thunder because I was going to say that, the only gun laws that they could pass that would help this situation is to ban all of the gun-free zones. Because people don't realize where most guns are, there's the least amount of violence. Show me the mass shooting at a gun range, where everybody's armed.
That's right.
You never hear that for some reason, and that's where you'll find most people.
Yeah, you never. I always said it this way, Jeff. You never hear about the gun store getting robbed, do you?
No. Not if you're smart.
You don't. No, you might hear about some idiot getting shot at the gun store trying to rob the place, but
yeah, that's true. But it's like, New York, Chicago, and everything. If you want to stop a lot of the killing in those places, I don't see how they get away with it. But arm everybody. These gangbangers are out there with the guns and everything and shooting everybody. If they was going to get shot back, maybe they would think twice before they started shooting.
Well, 100%. I agree with you that the only thing that these gun-free zones declaration. I said earlier today, I don't know if you were listening, Jeff, but these little, have you ever seen one of these signs that has the gun on it and then like the red circle with a line through it?
Oh, yeah.
People tell me about those all the time, Jeff, but I've never seen one. I've never seen one. You know why I've never seen one?
Because you don't go there.
Well, no, because I don't look.
Oh, you don't look.
You know what I'm saying?
What needs to be put on those signs? We just need a fish in a barrel. Stick a little sticker on those signs. That's what you are when you enter that zone. You're a fish in a barrel, man.
I hate to laugh, but man, it's true. Jeff, great call. I got to run to the news. I appreciate it. Call me back, brother. I thank you for the call. Now, understand my sarcasm when I say that, because here's what I get to do. If old Fraction Jackson, general manager of What's the Matter You store, comes up, I don't know, I'm making something up, and if he's the GM of the Cracker Barrel, let's say, and he comes up and said, "Sir, I believe that I see a gun on your person. Don't you know that this is a gun-free store? This is a gun-free restaurant. This is a gun-free shop. This is a gun-free establishment." You know what I will say? I didn't see that. I'm sorry. I apologize. I shall leave. By the way, we got a couple of good pieces of news regarding guns in the state of Tennessee. I'll tell you about those there were a couple of pieces of legislation that the Tennessee court unanimously struck down. 2 gun control laws that were struck down by Gibson County Chancery Court, overturning 2 state laws preventing Tennesseans from carrying firearms in parks and having the, quote, intent to go armed. I believe this is good news, and it's pursuant to exactly what I've been saying about gun-free zones. More on that in a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You know, Brian's so right. Brian writes in on the Super Text line. By the way, you can write us on the Super Text line, 615-737-9986. It functions just like a text, right? You're texting me directly in studio, and if you don't want to wait on the phone lines, you can do that. Brian writes in and says it's weird because Brian's identifying with my remark that I never see, you know, those no guns allowed signs. I never see them. I never see them. I don't know. I mean, if, you know, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I believe in property rights. I believe that this restaurant that I'm sitting in with my piece safely concealed has every right in the world to set up the rules of their choosing. But if I don't know about them, y'all know what I'm saying? You got to let me know. If I don't know, then I don't know. It's weird. I never see them. I never see those no guns allowed signs. I wish they'd put them more prominently displayed. I'd abide by the rules, but as it stands, I'm concealed carry. Thank you very much. But I often notice the firearms welcome signs. I see those everywhere. I believe that I don't know that I've ever missed one. You know, you'll see the sign. It has a gun. Typically, it says firearms welcome. I like this one. Firearms welcome. Please keep all weapons holstered unless need arises. In such a case, judicious marksmanship is greatly appreciated. I mean it, folks. You train yourself not just in how to use a gun, but when to use a gun. You need to know that. It could save your life, and even if your life is spared in the use of a gun, it could save your life in terms of your freedom if you misuse your gun. Understand how to use it. And use it judiciously. So a couple of the laws, I mentioned this story that came out. I'm reading from the Tennessee Star. Hold on, I've got to sneeze. Pardon me. My apologies, Jackson.
That was 2 big ones.
That was, yeah. I believe in getting them out, get the demons out of there. The Gibson County Chancery Court overturned 2 state laws that prevented Tennesseans from carrying firearms in parks and having the, quote, intent to go armed. The Chancery Court was made up of 3 judges. Tennessee law requires 3 judges to decide a case when someone challenges the constitutionality of a law. The carrying firearms in parks law referred to Tennessee Code 39-17-1311A. It made it a criminal offense to someone for anyone to carry or possess a firearm in any public park or playground for recreational purposes. The other law, for the intent to go armed, it referred to Tennessee Code 39-17-1307A1, which said that a person commits an offense who carries with the intent to go armed a firearm or a club. What? In the court's decision regarding both of these laws, it stated the statutes violated the Second Amendment to the United States of America's Constitution and Bill of Rights, and Article 1, Section 26 of the Tennessee Constitution, which affirms a Tennessean's right to bear arms. The plaintiffs in the case were Stephen Hughes, Gun Owners of America, and the Gun Owners Foundation. Defendants were Governor Bill Lee and Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti and other state officials. Pertaining to, and just reading from the Tennessee Star article now, pertaining to carrying firearms in parks law, the defendants attempted to argue the law fell under the, quote, sensitive places doctrine. This doctrine states government can constitutionally prohibit the possession of firearms, thus lawfully requiring citizens to surrender their Second Amendment rights by foregoing the right to keep and bear arms in self-defense in such locations. The sensitive, and I'll say this is Murphy talking now, the sensitive locations doctrine, that is for places like a courthouse. Here's my rule of thumb. And it is not universal, and we can probably find certain exceptions that prove the rule, if you will. But here's my basic rule of thumb, okay? If the state of Tennessee expects me to disarm myself, then I expect the state of Tennessee will provide security for me. You follow? So if the state of Tennessee, when I go into the Capitol building, I was at the state Capitol just a couple of weeks ago, visiting with some young conservatives. And I went through the appropriate security measures, and I left my firearm in my truck, locked in my center console. And I knew that I would go through security, which is why I did so. But when I did that, I now have the expectation that if the proverbial poop hits the proverbial fan, that there are people there with guns that will assist me in fighting back. That's the expectation. Courthouse, the same deal. I understand that there are certain places that are of a sensitive nature that might preclude my ability to conceal carry or to keep and carry. But those are very few and far between. And I have a full expectation that the state, in prohibiting my right to protect myself per the Constitution, is fully prepared to protect me. Does that make sense to everybody? And so when you extend this sensitive places doctrine to places like parks, that's just garbage. Garbage. And I don't care who voted for it, and I don't care who passed it, and I don't care what the justification was for it. It's garbage. According to the defense, they said parks should be treated as sensitive places due to children being present there and the history of restricting said firearms in the parks. The defendants, they referenced state law, yada, yada, yada. The plaintiffs said the doctrine did not apply to parks because they were not, in fact, sensitive places. Historically, the plaintiffs said the park ban came after the Civil War, which meant the law did not reflect the true historic tradition of the Second Amendment. In the decision, the court stated that the park ban did not apply to the sensitive places doctrine because it pertains to government functions, such as, oh, looky here, I should read on down, such as legislative assembly, courthouse, and polling places. Furthermore, the court said parks and playgrounds and recreational areas are not essential government buildings, and there's no expectation that they're going to protect us. As a matter of fact, like 4963 has said, parks are some of the most dangerous places imaginable. 2372 writes in and says, hey, Matt, another thing is the Second Amendment doesn't say anything about a firearm. It says arms, which was intended to be the same weaponry the government has because it was meant for you to go up against the rogue government. I agree with that. So actually, hand grenades, rocket launchers, tanks, battleships, anything that's considered an arm shall not be infringed. You know what they also say, though? You know, I've had this conversation with folks in the past because my buddy 2372 then goes on to say, why the hell are you talking about guns anyway? It seems to be all they're interested in. Constitutionally, you should be able to carry anything you like. Right. Carry. Correct. It doesn't actually say carry, does it? It says bear. So if you really want to go by the letter of the law, 2372, I'll play that game. Anything you can bear, buddy. Anything you can bear. Got to shoot a projectile, though, which was the common definition of an arm at the time that the Second Amendment was written. But you got to be able to bear it on your person. And I don't know the last time you tried, but I can't bear a Sherman tank. Maybe a grenade launcher. It's 10 till the top of the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to run down some of these comments. Anytime that we have conversations about this, the Second Amendment. Look, I feel like I'm pretty close to being a Second Amendment absolutist. I don't think that I don't think in the modern world that the dangers involved with making, for example, suitcase nukes permissible for the average American. I don't think that we should have suitcase nukes. We have those available, right? But, There's some that would say, yeah, I mean, that's just what the Second Amendment says about it all. 2372 writes back and says, actually, Matt, you don't have to carry it. It says to carry or possess. No, it doesn't. The Second Amendment doesn't say that. It doesn't say to keep and it says to keep and bear. I mean, to keep and bear. So, I mean, it doesn't say possess. I mean, maybe I'm just splitting hairs, but I think we're all on the same page. And I'm not trying to, I've never met a subject that gets more rancorous for no reason than the Second Amendment, except for, Second Amendment. I mean, people are very, very sensitive about the Second Amendment. And I don't blame you because there are a lot of institutions and there are a lot of Americans that want to erode that right. And here's what I say to them. Come at me, bro. If you want to go after the Second Amendment, go for it. If you want to go after, my AR that I have at my home or any of my other guns that I have at my home that I keep and bear on occasion, then you have to repeal the Second Amendment. Thank you very much. 9751 says, Matt, the intent to go armed law said you couldn't carry on your property. Yeah, it was a bad law, and I'm glad that it got knocked over. And hopefully I assume that the state will appeal to whatever the next appellate court is, and whether that's the Tennessee Supreme Court or whatever, I would fully expect that based on Tennessee code and based on the Second Amendment, that they will rule with the defendants in the case or the plaintiffs. Which are they? I guess the plaintiffs. I won't take my old Ironsides to the park, I promise. Well, you can do whatever you'd like. I'm all about that. 3822, I just tuned in. I'm super curious how this conversation started and how it got to where it is now. Please and thank you. Well, first off, 3822, show starts at 3. We appreciate you being here promptly and on time. Thank you very much. Work is no excuse. Now, I would suggest to you that if you cannot be here at 3 o'clock, perhaps you need to get some priorities in order there, 3822, and maybe find yourself some other employment. I mean, look at Jackson as a good example. Jackson's got a lot of jobs. Jackson wears a lot of hats. Jackson gets here at 3.
Barely,
but he gets here. So come on now. Show starts at 3, guys. That said, it was all born out of the natural conversation that comes out of a tragic event, like what happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota today, and the news out of the state of Tennessee that a Tennessee court struck down 2 state laws involving firearms and the ability for you to carry a firearm into a park, and the ability to carry a firearm, quote, with the intent to go armed. Let's see. Anything else we need to get to before we go? I think that's about that's good. Oh, Jen Psaki's still a scumbag. That's good. Tomorrow on the show, Representative Scott Cepicky will join us, which is great. We haven't talked to Scott in quite a while. There's some good news regarding education in the state of Tennessee that we will discuss, and a few other matters that Scott will get into. Always good to talk with him. And I am so pleased to be joined tomorrow by Pastor Alan Jackson of World Outreach Church. Pastor Jackson will be on with us at 4:05. He's got a new show starting on Super Talk 99.7 WTN on the weekends. We'll find out all about that, but I'm very interested in what he has to say about some of the world events going on around us and how that translates into what he does, leading his flock at his church. That is coming up tomorrow. Mark Levin right now. Until next time, friends and neighbors, have a great evening. Hug your loved ones. So long, everybody.